So everybody, thanks so much for listening to us, whether it's on the podcast, radio, or another platform. We really appreciate that. If you are listening to us on one of the internet platforms, please like, subscribe, share, and hit the bell. We have Earl Brown on. Earl, and I think we've been on together about 3 times, give or take. And we bring him on because he's a virologist and he knows a lot about what is going on around the world, and he is a reliable source compared to a lot of people that are on different news outlets that are not reliable. So first of all, Earl Brown, thanks so much for always coming on. I really appreciate it.
Good to be here. Good to talk science with somebody who's trying to keep things straight.
About 2 weeks as far as the Omicron variant is starting. I'm thinking, because I heard this earlier on the news this morning, about 33% of Europe has Omicron. We all know that Delta was way more deadly than Omicron. Omicron is supposed to be more mild. So since you're the virologist and I'm just the listener, I want to hear what your opinion on is, if you can tell the audience, Professor Brown, about the Omicron variant.
Okay, so Omicron. So that's Greek letter O. That's why we're naming it Omicron. Before this, we're going through a Delta. US is covered in Delta, Canada's covered in Delta. And so that's a previous variant that swept the planet, earlier this year. It first showed up in India. India had a history where the COVID came up, hit them pretty hard, and they shut down pretty hard, pretty heavy-handed. Modi sort of kept the slums hemmed up. They couldn't even get food out. They were really pretty upset about that, but it did sort of get a handle on the problem. But then they vaccinated a few other people, 5%, and then they thought, well, we're in good shape, let's go back to her. And that worked for a while. And then Delta showed up, and that ripped a strip up both sides of them, really, and filled the hospitals. They were running out of oxygen. Oxygen keeps the people who are in ICU alive if you're really in bad shape. And so they had oxygen disruptions. They would lose like 2-3 dozen people overnight because the oxygen lines went down. So, they had their face rubbed into it with Delta. So Delta comes along, it's hitting harder. And so it's called a selective sweep when you get a virus that pushes all the other ones out. So the whole planet's essentially Delta now. We all got Delta. So Delta's not that great. Immunization doesn't work quite as well, but the numbers were like, we had, I keep the numbers straight, we had 95% protection against the first variant, then we had Delta comes along, it pushed down our vaccine effectiveness to 82%. That means 82% of vaccinees don't get infected, 18% do if you look at your population. So vaccines didn't work as well, but still kept us in there. It saved a lot of lives. People kept out of the ICU and death largely. Vaccines were working. It's a more serious disease. Delta, more than twice as much death rate. So it spread much better, killed much more. Now we got Omicron that came out of the woodwork in South Africa. They reported November 26th to the world, we got this new variant. And they first saw it November 9th, their first case. But by November 26th was already pushing out Delta. A couple of weeks later, it's 50%. Now it's essentially 90% in their Daotong. That's their large province, a couple of cities in there. And so they told the world about it. They first identified this Omicron because they used PCR tests for identifying SARS coronavirus 2 causes COVID-19. And so the test wasn't working for some of the tests. Like the PCR, they put in little sticky bits of DNA, it sticks to the RNA of the virus, and then you put enzymes that copy the genes. Polymerase chain reaction, you keep making more and more copies until you have enough to see. You have to have something there to start with. But anyways, when they were looking at one of the genes, the S gene, the spike gene, they were calling it a signal dropout. It was like it wasn't there, but the other genes were. They saw that with the Alpha variant, they're seeing it with the Omicron. And so they sequenced a lot down there, they sequenced it, and this thing was just riddled with mutations. And so this virus accumulates one or two mutations per month. That's the average. These other variants, we're getting about 25 mutations. Omicron's ringing the bell. 50 mutations on Omicron. So it's got a whole whack load of mutations. And it's not like it's been shot with a shotgun, here and there and everywhere. It's got mutations right in the busy spots, how this thing works. And these mutations are making it work better. A lot of the same mutations you saw in the other variants, like alpha, beta, gamma, it's got the same ones because you've got evolution in some environment, and it's not going person to person, it's staying in one person and evolving like a super evolution, super mutator. And so people who can't get rid of the infection probably got immunodeficiency, cancers of the blood system, immune transplant. They think maybe an HIV patient, South Africa, immune system doesn't work. So the virus goes to town for weeks and months, growing, and you get the best mutants outcompete everything else over and over again. At the end of this, you got this virus with 50 mutations. You look at the spike protein, that's where our vaccines are directed. So the mRNA vaccine is the mRNA for the spike protein. We make the protein in us, we make antibodies against the protein. That's the way it works. So this Omicron, it's got 30 mutations in this protein. And if you look at right where the business part of spike, where it binds to our cells, 15 mutations, some of them right where our antibodies bind. And so this virus can overcome our vaccine immunity. That's one of the scary things about it. And so it's taken off in people who have immunity.
If we get everybody in the United States or Canada vaccinated, then all of a sudden this is just going to go away. Can you tell people on this podcast that that is not true? That there has been breakthrough cases by people that are fully vaccinated, 2 shots, even 3 shots. And there's still people on the media, and I know maybe they mean well, but they're not really throwing good information by saying to people, if they get 2 or 3 shots, they're not going to get COVID-19. They are, and they still could.
Well, that's right. So it's a numbers game, right? So you've got a vaccine, and these vaccines are good. Vaccine effect, let's talk about the starting. So we make the first vaccine. We give 2 shots as recommended for mRNA. That gives you like 95%, low 90% prevention of getting infected. That's great. But even from the get-go, the other 5% get infected. And they'll get sick, they'll get COVID, mild cases, right? But the odd one will go into hospital or die. Those are the people who are like in late ages, 80s, with underlying conditions. It's tough to protect them as well. But that vaccines are under 100%. So that's the situation we're working with, right? And so, people say, oh, your vaccine's not perfect. Yeah, well, show me something that is, And so those are really good vaccine numbers. We live with influenza vaccines. They work 40% on a bad year, 70% on a good year. But you give them to high risk. They save people who are otherwise going to go to the hospital and that sort of thing. But yeah, vaccines are great, but they're not perfect. And then immunity, it's not lifelong. Everybody likes to think that, it's like measles. You get measles as a kid, which I did, old enough to be before the vaccine. So I've got lifelong immunity. We know we get that. And so people are saying, well, coronavirus, you'll get lifelong immunity from coronavirus. Well, it'd be nice if that was the case, but we got a whole lot of respiratory viruses. There's like over 200 of them, and they infect our respiratory tract. And they tend to reinfect us because immunity due to respiratory infections usually isn't lifelong. For one thing, you're infecting the outside of your body. It seems like you're infecting your inside of your body. You're infecting the surface of your lungs and your airway when you get these respiratory infections. The immune system can see them, it reacts to them, but not quite as well if the bug was right in your tissues. And so, it's we have lots. You take coronavirus that cause the common cold, because the common cold, coronavirus is one of the key viruses that gives us the sniffles, runny nose, very rarely pneumonia. And so, but it's right up there with the rhinoviruses and a whole bunch of others that people hear about. There's RSV and the paraflu, people with toddlers and stuff, and they know those terms because those are what hit the kids harder. But we got all these viruses, but they can reinfect us after a few years. And like the garden variety coronavirus, they think it infects you every other year. And so you got some immunity, but these viruses are in the infecting you business. And so,
Yeah.
you know, we have our immune system, which is fighting on our side, but the virus has ways of sort of making the immune system not work just that well. And so, you know, it'd be nice if we had, you know, best case scenario in every scenario, but in the real world, you usually get reinfected with respiratory infections. And this coronavirus that's showing up, the SARS coronavirus 2, is a bit trickier than most right now. And we're seeing that it can really change. It can actually duck our immunity, which is how the vaccination works.
Yeah.
It's giving your immune system, you know, the smell of the dog sort of thing. Oh, this is the thing, make antibodies to that. And then when the real thing shows up, you fight it. But we're in that case now that we got Omicron. It's beaten our immune system, our vaccine up pretty bad. So they only work about 30% as well
So
as the starting variants.
what would you tell people? Because like you said, it's only 30%. And if they're going to make another shot that's specifically for Omicron, why would you get, you know, that's 4 shots?
Right. So just to back up to the 2 shots. So originally they said you need a primer and a booster. That's the shot, mRNA, Moderna, Pfizer.
Right.
And so works great up until Delta. Still works in Delta still pretty well. Omicron shows up, you got 33% thereabouts. So you're not doing very well. But then if you take the 3rd shot, and we're trying to call it the 3rd shot now instead of the booster, because it gets confusing, because the original regime was 1st and 2nd, they call it 2nd a booster. Now we're counting 3rd shot. So you get the 3rd shot, you're in the game. So 2 shots, 30%, that's not that very good. 3 shots, you're up to 75%. So we're back into the game. So if you've got 3 shots, and a lot of people do, expect 75% protection against getting infected and getting sick with Omicron. Pretty good, not bad. And so the 3 shots is what you should go after now. You can wait for the Omicron shot, but it's going to take, they said, well, and they started a couple of weeks ago when Omicron showed up, but it's taken will take them about 2 months to make some product. They have to do a little bit of testing. They can't just put it in people right away. They have to do a little bit of safety testing. And then they got to get it around to everybody. They got to get it to the public health people. You won't get it for 3 months optimally. Then you're facing Omicron the whole time. So I would say get your 3 shots, gets you in the game pretty good. And the people you worry about are the weak links, the people who are older, the people who have underlying conditions. They're the ones who you hear about, oh, they got infected, end up in ICU and died. Those people are hunting for something better than what we've got right now. But right now, 3 shots is pretty good, but probably there will be an Omicron specific, or the problem is we're getting a variant every 9 months or so now. So you make an Omicron shot, you're ready to go Omicron. Are you going to get, and I'm sorry, I don't know the next letter in the Greek alphabet. Are we going to get the next one, you know? And so good news is existing shot to the original virus, the Wuhan strain, covers the Omicron after 3 shots pretty well. So that's pretty good news. And then you mentioned about the drug. Should I just rely on Pfizer's new Paxlovid? It's a protease inhibitor, 90% effective. You have to give it within 3 days of being sick. Take a couple of pills a day for 5 days, and very effective. Mind you, it's not licensed in Canada. I don't think it's licensed in the US.
No, it's not out yet.
It's in process. And they got the Molnupiravir, that drug from Merck. But it's only about 30% effective. And so then your numbers aren't so good. You know, they have the antibody treatments, but some of the antibody treatments don't work now with the Omicron because it's changed its surface protein so much. So, you know, I'd say that, you know, the vaccine game is a little frustrating right now. 3 shots. I just got my 3rd shot a couple of weeks ago. And so feeling pretty good. But you're not up to like as high as you like to be, but 75% effectiveness against getting sick is pretty good.
So we have these hesitant groups, and I want you to talk straight to them. We have the people that have got 2 shots, and I just kind of went through that realm with you that, you know, now there's Omicron. Should I get the 3rd shot? Should I wait for the specific Omicron one? So there's that train of thought. Then you have the people that are even way back than that, where the people that didn't have any shots, and their thought is, okay, So you want us to get 3 shots. Then there's the Omicron specific, that's a 4th shot. We have saw in Israel that they're trying to come out with the 4th shot. And they have the people, and I'm not really by this thought, but we have the people that are thinking this saying, how many shots are we going to put in our body in a year? And I kind of see where they're saying, but I do see the health issues with this too, and we still don't really know a lot about it. And that was because of a lot of people in politics and also some people in the medical field, but that's another story for another day. So, what would you say to the people again that, they're saying this is going to be like the 4th shot in a couple of months if they do get that specific Omicron shot, and they're thinking it's like a big money maker for the pharmaceutical companies in general.
Well, yeah, you've got this thing. It's hard for me as a scientist to talk to some people who think that all the scientists are either stupid or in somebody's pocket, or both. Understanding that the pharmaceutical industry is a business. You make money, you make a lot of money, and some companies are making a lot of money right now. And so you do have to worry, especially Pfizer comes up a few months ago and says you'll do better with a 3rd shot now. That was before Omicron showed up, right? And so FDA says, well, no, they're working pretty good right now. We don't need a 3rd shot. So yeah, and are you going to say that Pfizer is a bum for doing that? But we got our eyes open, right? Okay, so they have other motivations other than their health, right? And so that is a concern. But then you've got, you can't, you can be annoyed about reality, but it's tough to change it, right? And so if we got variants that keep showing up and the vaccines aren't as effective, then you've got to make the changes. And so that's, you either live with it or you make a change. And so a lot of us, guys, you're a young kid down there in Florida, like, what do you have to worry about? Well, not much with COVID. Some, you don't want to be on your ass for part of a week and maybe have a hell of a time. And if you're unlucky, go in the hospital, but the odds are pretty good for you. But you look at me, I'm an old guy, and of course I look great, but it doesn't mean I don't have a lot of tree rings. It's like I don't want to face that thing in a dark alley. So I'm going to take all the shots I can get. But yeah, it's unfortunate when we have the mistrust. Some of it's well founded. There's historical situations. People are motivated by money. Everybody is. But you sort of got to look at what are the options. And people say, I'm putting all these needles in me. It's unnatural. Well, we'll take those viruses. They'll go naturally right down your throat, and then you'll have that. And that's nothing to do with the industry or whatever. So it's this what we're giving you in the vaccine is a small dose of molecules that are pretty natural in their construction. mRNA, our cells are used to it. They'll read it, but they essentially chew it up and throw it out after not very many days. So yeah, I do hear what you're saying. I don't have a solution to that really, other than you and me, John, right here, which is we try to give the basis of what we think's going on, and scientists are catching up a lot of the time. And we're ahead of the game in some regards. We couldn't have done anything like this. Think 1918 flu. That's a virus that killed 2.5% of the people. That's the same number we got for COVID-19. But they didn't have antibiotics then. They didn't have ventilators. They didn't have a lot of stuff. They were treating people with aspirin. I think they killed a lot of people with aspirin overdose in 1918 because they just didn't have bullets to shoot at this thing. They didn't even know what it was. They didn't know it was influenza until the 30s when they isolated the first flus. And then said, oh, that pandemic was 1918 flu. They went and saw the antibodies. And then they've gone back and pulled the lungs out of those people. The army, which never throws anything away, there's a guy went and got lung tissues saved from 1918, and they use PCR and they pull out the flu genes. So that's the virus that caused that thing. But if you had COVID-19 in 1918, the number 2.5% death rate would be way higher. Like we're saving a lot of lives here.
Earl, I think this is going to just go on, and we need to figure out how to live life with this. We can't be cooped up all the time in our houses. Life's going to go on. And I was telling somebody this the other day. I'm like, listen, I got my shots. I need to figure out, say, hey, listen, I did what I could. If I get sick, it is what it is, because I can still take precautions and wear the mask and try to be away from everybody, but I can't live like a hermit and be locked in the house all the time, because otherwise you might as well just, call it quits in plain English, or you'll end up locked in a mental institution. So what is your hope for people that are listening to this? So, about this, do you have any thoughts about when you personally believe this is going to end? Do you believe that? I guess I'll just end with that. What is your belief on that?
Okay, so I think we're getting close to the point which we have to live with it. But right now, the problem is we got a weak link, and the weak link up here in Canada is our hospitals. And so if you get to the point where you can't care for all the COVID patients, that means patients are going to have to deal with it at home. And it also means all the people in the car accidents and the rest can't be cared for. So right now, that's what triggers all the alarms. And so, but we're getting, and in Canada, we got about not quite 80% of the total population vaccinated. As far as the eligible population, we're over 80. But we still have the toddlers under 5 aren't there's no vaccine license for them yet. That's coming in a couple of months. But I'd say pretty soon, when we've got the maximum number vaccinated who can be protected against serious disease, and if there's certain people who aren't vaccinated for whatever reason, you do what you can for them. But if they don't want to be vaccinated, then we let her go, as long as the hospitals can handle it. That's the weak point right now. If your healthcare is busted, everybody's in a bad way. So, but I think we're getting close to the point at which we'll have enough people have antibodies from vaccines or natural infection that, I'm saying if we get some variant that comes through and kills it 20% or something, no expectation for that, but that would change the game. But if we keep getting these variants, more or less like the variants we've got, at some point it's going to be like, I'm vaccinated, I'm protected against serious disease, I'm going to work, I'm doing my stuff, whatever. And then some people are going to hurt a little bit more because they're not protected. That's personal choice, right? Decision. And so we live with it. And I think we're probably getting close to that point. I would say next 6 months. This wave, we're going to get immune from the bug, which isn't as good as the vaccine. That's one myth that's out there. They say, oh, natural immunity is so much better than vaccine immunity. Wrong in spades. And nice if natural immunity from an infection was lifelong. It's not as good as vaccination. So people are going to have some immunity, some protection, but we are, as you say, we're going to have to live with it, because, you can't live hunkered down, and you have to have a good reason for hunkered down. And so I think those of us who get enough protection will live with it. And as long as the healthcare system can deal with the burden, we go through it.
So the
And
U.S.
it will settle down at some point. It's not going to keep hitting us really that hard, I don't think. But it may take a period of time. I don't know. But the vaccines will give us a tool that we can keep tinkering with, even if we can curse them, as long as they work,
So the U.S. is screwed because their healthcare system sucks.
I'd say a few individuals are screwed, yeah. Yeah, you can pay for your healthcare debt. If you got the money, you're okay.
Truthful.
No, if you got the money, you're okay. Yeah.
It's unfortunate. Okay. Earl Brown, University of Ottawa, thanks so much for your time, and thanks for educating the people that are listening. We need people like you more or so out there, instead of the crazy people in the mainstream media. So anyways, thanks so much.
You're welcome. Good to talk, Rob.